What's up, everyone? This is the Next Take Podcast, episode 186 with Mikel and
Tanyka.
real conversations on different topics. So, this is our fifth and last episode of our Women's History Month edition episode. If you want to check the last four episodes, it's available right now. Go check them out. Tanika, do you want to name the list and the next episode?
Yeah, so the first one was Alison Botha.
Mhm,
Second one was Elizabeth Smart and Elizabeth Thomas. The
mhm,
third one was Monica Lewinsky. The
mhm,
fourth one was Lorena Bobbitt.
mhm.
And this one, we're going to be talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So that's who we're going to be talking about this
All
time
right.
around. Um, just as a note before we head into that, obviously, because this episode's actually coming out on a Monday. Normally, those were 3-topic episodes, but because we're still in March, I did a flippy, and you're going to get the 3-topic episode on Thursday instead for this week only, and then we go back to normal. Because I wanted to have one more episode for Women's History Month. So that's why you're getting this one first.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, so basically I think that's it for that. Um, and I did mention that I was going to be doing an episode with my friend on my other podcast about America's Next Top Model. That's exclusive to my Patreon, so I'll link it.
All
But
right.
I will be releasing a sneak peek of it. It was probably about 40 minutes of the episode on my main feed as well. So I'll link to that as well if you want to listen to that first and then
Uh-huh.
see if you want
Uh-huh.
to. But it was a fun episode
Okay.
talking about that garbage. So,
All right.
all right. So
Ah,
let's just head into the episode now. So, do you know who Ruth Bader Ginsburg is, Nicole?
no,
You
I don't
heard
know
of
who it
her?
is. No, I never heard of her, yeah, at
Okay.
all. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Uh-huh.
let's learn about her. So, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was born March 15th, 1933 in Brooklyn, New York, and then would subsequently die on September 18th, 2020 in Washington, D.C., was an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States from 1993 to 2020. She was the second woman to serve on the Supreme Court.
Okay.
So, Joan Ruth Bader was the younger of the two children of Nathan Bader, who was a merchant, and Cecilia Bader. Her
Uh,
elder sister, Marilyn, died of meningitis at the age of 6 when Joan was 14 months old. Outside her family, Ginsburg began to go by the name Ruth in kindergarten to help her teachers distinguish her from other students named Joan.
mm,
The Baders were an observant Jewish family, and Ruth attended synagogue and participated in Jewish traditions as a child. She excelled in school, where she was heavily involved in student activities and earned excellent grades. At about the time when Ruth started high school, Cecilia was diagnosed with cancer. She died of the disease 4 years later, just days before Ruth's scheduled graduation ceremony, which Ruth could not attend. Ruth entered Cornell University on a full scholarship. During her first semester, she met her future husband, Martin, or Marty
uh-huh.
Ginsburg, who was also a student at Cornell. Martin, who eventually became a nationally prominent tax attorney, exerted an important influence on Ruth through sorry, I lost my spot here, through his strong and sustained interest in her intellectual pursuits. She was also influenced by two other people, both professors, whom she met at Cornell, the author Vladimir, I think it's Nabokov, who shaped her thinking about writing, and the constitutional lawyer Robert Cushman, who inspired her to pursue a legal career.
Uh-huh.
Martin and Ruth were married in June 1954. Sorry, one second. I gotta unplug my computer. Okay.
Oh,
1954, 9 days after she graduated from Cornell.
nice.
After Martin was drafted into the U.S. Army, the Ginsburgs spent 2 years in Oklahoma, where he was stationed. Their daughter Jane, their first child, was born during this time. The Ginsbergs then moved to Massachusetts, where Martin resumed and Ruth began studies at Harvard Law School. While Ruth completed her coursework and served on the editorial staff of the Harvard Law Review, she was the first woman to do so. She acted as caregiver not only to Jane, but also to Martin, who had been diagnosed with testicular cancer. After his recovery, Martin graduated and accepted a job with a law firm in New York City. Ruth completed her legal education at Columbia Law School, serving on the law review and graduating in a tie for first place in her class in 1959. Despite her excellent credentials, she struggled to find employment as a lawyer because of her gender and the fact that she was a mother, because mothers can't work, apparently. At the time, only a very small percentage of lawyers in the United States were women, and only 2 women had ever served as federal judges. It, the legal industry truly is then, and I don't know, is now still a man's world. So women definitely have a bigger fight when it comes to being
True.
lawyers,
Yeah.
and it's sad. Um, However, one of her Columbia law professors advocated on her behalf and helped to convince Judge Edmund Palmieri of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York to offer Ginsburg a clerkship. So that ran from 1959 to 1961. An associate director of the Columbia Law School's Project on International Procedure, she studied Swedish civil procedure. Her research was eventually published in a book called Civil Procedure in Sweden, 1965, co-written with Anders Bruzellis, I think is how you say his name. Hired by the Rutgers School of Law and an assistant professor in 1963, she was asked by the dean of the school to accept a low salary because of her husband's well-paying job. Let me repeat that again. She was asked by the dean of the
Mm.
school to accept a lower salary because her husband was being paid well. What does her husband being paid well have anything to do with her salary?
Mm.
But those were the times.
Yeah.
After she became pregnant with the couple's second child, a son named James, born in 1965, Ginsburg wore oversized clothes for fear that her contract would not be renewed. She earned a tenure at Rutgers in 1969. In 1970, Ginsburg became professionally involved in the issue of gender equality when she was asked to introduce and moderate a law student panel discussion on the topic of women's liberation. In 1971, she published 2 law review articles on the subject and taught a seminar on gender discrimination. As part of the course, Ginsburg partnered with the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, to draft briefs in 2 federal cases. The first, originally brought to her attention by her husband, involved a provision of the federal tax code that denied single men a tax deduction for serving as caregivers to their families. The second involved an Idaho state law that expressly preferred men to women, in determining who should administer the estates of people who die without a will.
Mm.
So, yeah. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision in the latter case, Reed versus Reed in 1971, was the first in which a gender-based statute was struck down on the basis of the Equal Protection Clause. During the remainder of the 1970s, Ginsburg was a leading figure in gender discrimination litigation. That discrimination, that was okay. Discrimination litigation. Wow. In
Mm.
1972, she became founding counsel of the ACLU's Women's Rights Project and co-authored a law school casebook on gender discrimination. In the same year, she became the first tenured female faculty member at Columbia Law School. She authored dozens of law review articles and drafted or contributed to many Supreme Court briefs on the issue of gender discrimination. During the decade, she argued before the Supreme Court 6 times, winning 5 cases, which is great odds. In 1980, Democratic U.S. President Jimmy Carter appointed Ginsburg to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit in Washington, D.C. While serving as a judge on the D.C. Circuit, Ginsburg developed a reputation as a pragmatic liberal with a keen attention to detail. She enjoyed cordial professional relationships with two well-known conservative judges on the court, Robert Bork and Antonin Scalia, and often voted for them. In 1993, she delivered the Madison Lecture at New York University Law School, offering a critique of the reasoning, though not the ultimate holding, of Roe versus Wade, the famous case in which the Supreme Court found a constitutional right of women to choose to have an abortion. And we know where that is going to go.
Yeah.
Ginsburg argued that the court should have issued a more limited decision, which would have left more room for state legislatures to address particular details, such as approach she claimed, quote, might have served to reduce rather than to fuel controversy, which maybe she was right. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. On June 14th, 1993, Democratic U.S. President Bill Clinton announced his nomination of Ginsburg to the Supreme Court to replace retiring Justice Byron Wright. Her confirmation hearings were quick and relatively uncontroversial. She was endorsed unanimously by the Senate Judiciary Committee and confirmed by the full Senate on August 3rd by a vote of 96 to 3.
Wow.
I'm assuming 96 for, 3 against. What do can I question those 3? Like, just
Uh-huh.
go with it. On the court, Ginsburg became known for her active participation in oral arguments and her habit of wearing jabots or collars with her judicial robes, some of which express a symbolic meaning. She identified, for example, both a majority opinion collar and a dissent collar. Early in her tenure on the court, Ginsburg wrote the majority's opinion in United States versus Virginia, 1996, which held that the men-only admission policy of a state-run university, the Virginia Military Institute, violated the Equal Protection Clause. Rejecting VMI's contention that its program of military-focused education was unsuitable for women, Ginsburg noted that the program was in fact unsuitable for the vast majority of uh, of Virginia college students, regardless of gender. So she said, quote, generalizations about the way women are, estimates of what is appropriate for most women, no longer justify denying opportunity to women whose talent and capacity place them outside the average description. Although Ginsburg tended to vote with other liberal justices on the court, she got along well with most of the conservative justices who had been appointed before her. She enjoyed a special connection with Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, a moderate conservative and the first woman appointed to the Supreme Court, and she and conservative Justice Antonin Scalia famously bonded over their share of love of opera. Indeed, the American composer, lyricist Derek Wang wrote a successful comic opera, Scalia/Ginsburg, that was the name of it, celebrating their relationship. She praised the work of the first Chief Justice with whom she served, William, oh, this is a name, Rehnquist, I think it is,
Huh.
another conservative. This goes to show it doesn't matter which side of things you are on, you can still get along, you know?
All right. All right.
Ginsburg had less in common with most of the justices appointed by Republican U.S. presidents George W. Bush and Donald J. Trump. However,
Mm.
that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Ginsburg attracted attention for several strongly worded dissenting opinions and publicly read some of her dissents from the bench to emphasize the importance of the case. Two such decisions in 2007 concerned women's rights. The first, Gonzalez versus Carhart, upheld the federal Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act on a 5-4 vote. Ginsburg decried the judgment as alarming, arguing that it cannot be understood as anything other than an effort to chip away at a right, the right of women to choose to have an abortion, declared again and again by this court.
Oof.
Similarly, in Ledbetter versus Goodyear Tire, another 5-4 decision, Ginsburg criticized the majority's holding that a woman could not bring a federal civil suit against her. Sorry, I gotta find my spot. Uh, Um, against her employer for having paid for less than it had paid men. Because as we know, back then, in case no one knows this, women were not being paid equally to men. And I think we've gotten a little bit better with that, but not back then. So, yeah. The plaintiff did not become aware of her right to file suit until after the filing period had passed. Ginsburg argued that the majority's reasoning was inconsistent with the will of the U.S. Congress, a view that was somewhat vindicated when Congress passed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009, the first bill that Democratic U.S. President Barack Obama signed into law. My president. Anyways,
Mm.
with the retirements of Justices David Sauter in 2009 and John Paul Stevens in 2010, Ginsburg became the most senior justice within the liberal bloc. She wrote dissents articulating liberal perspectives in several more prominent and politically charged cases. Her partial dissent in the Affordable Care Act cases, 2012, which posed a constitutional challenge to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, criticized her five conservative colleagues for concluding, in her view, contrary to the decades of judicial precedent, that the Commerce Clause did not empower Congress to require most Americans to obtain health insurance or pay a fine. In Shelby County versus Holder, 2013, the court's conservative majority struck down oh God, where am I? Struck down unconstitutional Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, VRA, of 1965, which had required certain states and local jurisdictions to obtain prior approval from the Federal Justice Department of any proposed changes to voting laws or procedures. Ginsburg, in dissent, criticized the hubris of the majority's demolition of the VRA and declared that throwing out preclearance when it has worked and is continuing to work to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. Ginsburg was likewise highly critical of the majority's opinion in Burwell versus Hobby Lobby Stores, Inc., 2014, a decision that recognized the right of for-profit corporations to refuse on religious grounds to comply with the Affordable Care Act's requirement that employers pay for coverage of certain contraceptive drugs and devices in their employees' health insurance plans. So basically, this is saying that a employer thinks they have the right to say, for example, women can't go get birth control under their policy, which would then have to force those said women to go buy birth control like full out. So,
Huh.
which is obviously not a cheap endeavor.
Yeah.
Unless you can go to like a Planned Parenthood or something, but I don't know how that works in the States.
Yeah.
But here in
Yeah.
Canada,
Yeah. Canada,
there's
it's
like
important.
there's age limits. So,
Yeah. Age limits, and then there's you have to go to the straight to the counter, and then
well, that's besides the point. That's not the issue.
yeah.
Because I don't think people really have an issue. Because I've did that. It's not. I don't think that's an issue that people have
Uh-huh.
doing that because they're getting what they need. The issue is for that type of situation, there is age limits, and you're not necessarily getting it for free, but you're getting it at a discount. Um, so, like, for example, when I was doing that, I was paying about $10 back in the day for birth control. So, it that was something you could do, but for women, at least here in Canada,
Yeah.
we aged out, I think, at 25. Men, however, aged out, like, 30 or 28
Mm.
or 30 years old, which is, again, why? Why are we aging out before men or even men aging out before us? Why can't we just be the same age and call it a day? What is it about men that they need to be in there longer than women? Like, it just never made sense to me. But again, I don't know if that's how it is in the States. I don't even know if that's how it is today. Because then again, that was a long time ago for me.
There's probably scientific reasons why.
I don't know if I agree with that though. Because I just I don't know why that matters when you're trying to provide people, you know, information and whatnot to not have unplanned pregnancies. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what science has to do with that. If
Uh-huh.
anything, women are still capable of we're capable of getting pregnant long past 25. I'm not saying that women should be in
Uh-huh.
there forever. I'm just curious as to why men are allowed to be there till almost 30. That's what I remembered back then anyways.
Uh-huh.
It could have changed now, but I am just
Wait. Sorry. Men use birth control?
well, they're talking condoms. There isn't a birth control pill
Oh,
for men.
okay. I'm about to say. Okay,
But
sorry.
again, Planned
Yeah.
Parenthood wasn't just about getting birth control.
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood is sexual health in general or just health in general that
Uh-huh.
you can't necessarily get access to or feel comfortable getting access to from either a family doctor or whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, so that's what it's about.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And that's so it's not just about that. So it's like it's just health in general. So why does there have to be two different cutoffs? I
Uh-huh.
agree there should be a cutoff. I'm just saying why does it have to be two different ones? That was my question.
Yeah.
But anyways, um Ginsburg wrote that the majority opinion, quote, falters at each step of its analysis and expressed concern that the court had ventured into a minefield by holding that commercial enterprises can opt out of any law, saving only tax laws, they judge incompatible with their sincerely held religious beliefs. Throughout her career, Ginsburg concluded her dissents with the phrase, I dissent, which I have slippers that have Ruth Bader Ginsburg face on them. My mom actually got them from work, and they say, "I dissent."
Mm.
So it's pretty cool. Um, rather than the conventional and more common, I respectfully dissent. Because she doesn't respectfully dissent, she just dissents. Okay. Which she considered an unnecessary and slightly disingenuous nicety. In part because of her increasing outspokenness, Ginsburg became, during the Obama administration, so that ran from 2009 to 2017. Wait, 2017? No, it didn't. Did it? Oh, yeah, it did. I guess technically it did, yeah.
What?
Okay.
What? Sorry, say again?
It says that his administration ran from 2009 to 2017, but I guess technically it did because it would have gone into January,
Yeah.
right? So it would have been
Yeah,
27.
yeah,
Yeah, it would have been
yeah.
2017.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
A progressive and feminist folk hero. So again, she became that. Inspired
Mm.
by some of her dissents, a second-year law student at New York University created a Tumblr, remember Tumblr, blog
Uh-huh.
entitled
Uh-huh.
Notorious RBG. I remember this. A play on Notorious B.I.G., in case you don't know. And if you don't, what happened? The stage name of the American rapper Christopher Wallace, which became a popular nickname for Ginsburg among her admirers. Nevertheless, some liberals, citing Ginsburg's advanced age and concerns about her health, she was twice a cancer survivor, and apparent frailty, argued that she should retire in order to allow Obama to nominate a liberal replacement. Um, others, however, where am I here? Sorry. Okay, yeah. Others, however, pointed to her vigorous exercise routine and the fact that she had never missed an oral argument to urge that she should remain on the court for as long as possible. For her own part, Ginsburg expressed her intention to continue for as long as she was able to perform her job full steam. Because let me tell you something about lawyers, they don't stop
Uh-huh.
until they have to. Okay? They're going to
Uh-huh.
keep going. Um, on the day after Martin Ginsburg died in 2010, she went to work at the court as usual because she said it was what he would have wanted. In an interview in 2016, Ginsburg expressed dismay at the possibility that Republican candidate Donald Trump could be elected president. Well, shit. A statement that was widely criticized as not in keeping with the court's tradition of staying out of politics. It, I get it, but screw that. Screw that. We were all worried. We had
Oh,
every right to be. Anyway, Ginsburg later said that she regretted the remark. Oh, girl, don't regret it. Um, Trump's electoral victory renewed criticism of Ginsburg for not having retired while Obama was president. She remained on the court as its oldest justice, publicly mindful of John Paul Stevens' service until the age of 90. So this brings me then to my question, because that's actually the end of the episode.
mhm,
That brings me to my question. Why is it that, oh, she's so frail now and she's not like health wise? And I understand that to an extent, but she's the whatever, she's frail. Maybe she should retire now. But we had that justice who was a man. He went till he was 90. So what's the problem? Why was it
mhm,
okay for him to go till he was 90?
uh,
Anyways, she, as we know, she died in 2020. From my recollection, because again, 2020 was a long time ago, even though it was only 6 years ago,
mhm,
um, I vaguely remember she was there still working up until that point, and then she died not too long after that. Um, so yeah, I mean,
mm,
that's Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I wanted to do this because it's, she, was the second woman to be at the Supreme Court,
right.
which is insane. And she did so much for women's rights and, equality. And then not only that, but the religious aspect of it too, which again kind of blends into women's rights as well, because let's be real, that whole thing with Hobby Lobby, which I've heard about, was to mess with women. So she did a lot. And I think she's remarkable. And I still need to watch the movie. I have not watched the movie yet, but I will one of these days. My mom did. She said it was pretty good, but I haven't gone
Yeah,
around watching it yet. But
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, that's it for Women's History Month. But
Hmm.
I would like to compare how much women are in the law industry right now. So like 2014, 36% of women are in law.
Hmm.
As of 2024, 41%. 21% of women are in law right now. So it increases like every every year. International estimate suggests that women are closer to 45 to 47% of lawyers worldwide, depending on the country. Uh, yeah, men still outnumber women in law overall, but the profession is rapidly shifting. Future likely to reach near 50-50, even majority women with the next couple of decades. So yeah, it's pretty close in terms of like women. And I noticed that too. So like I noticed like there's a lot of women in that field. Um, I think because
Well,
women can
there,
go ahead, go
yes.
ahead, go ahead,
Yes,
go
I'm
ahead.
not saying that there isn't a lot of women in the field. What I was
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
saying is that
I'm just
there's
saying.
still more men than there
Yeah,
is women. And then
yeah,
when we're talking statistics, which is fine. But what
yeah,
I'm talking about as a person who's in this industry
yeah.
is women have to fight harder to be seen in this industry. And it's getting a bit better, but in the start of my career, which was, 13 years ago, it it wasn't like that. It was still really difficult, and you could sense as an assistant, you can sense the difference of what it's like to work for a woman versus what it's like to work for a man. A man tends to be a little, not all men, but a man tends to be a little bit more calmer, a little bit more confident in themselves. But then you have the woman who has probably the confidence, but also feels like they have to push harder to be respected. So it's a very different atmosphere for women. Like I said, it is getting better, but it is still very hard to be recognized. And I think honestly, with where we're kind of at, I think
Mhm.
once we can filter out some of like the old ass generation, I'm talking the fossil generation of lawyers that are still hanging on to their freaking like law license, like, it's ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
I think once we can kind of get out of that and kinda get into this more, middle-aged type generation and the younger generation, it's definitely gonna make it better for women and women being respected. Because when I look at my firm, no one's a dinosaur. He retired, thank God, but
Uh-huh.
we have a lot of, like, I would say people in, like, their 60s at the oldest, and then that um, the youngest, I think he's close to 30, and we do have women, but we also don't have a lot of women lawyers at my firm. We have,
Uh-huh.
trying to think of the other offices here too, I think, yeah, I think it's only 2, 2,
Oh, at your firm, okay.
yeah, and out of, I would say there's about 20 lawyers, 2 are women. I didn't even
Mm,
think about that, but yeah, 2 are women. Um, when I look at my mom's firm, now there is a man, 1, 1 man in her firm. Hers is small too, 1 man. The rest are women. Her partner, like the partnership, the partners of the firm, the equity partners of the firm are all women. That is unheard of. But when she told me that, I'm like, "Wow, that's insane," because you just don't see that. But I
mm,
think that's awesome, and I think we need a little bit more of that, a little bit more women in the pool than, you know,
uh-huh.
and nice women, because there are women out there that are not nice, but I think it's a mixture of different things.
So,
But
okay.
anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. Like the older generation still have a
they have a
grip
chip on their
on
shoulder.
yeah a grip of yeah in the law in law right now because I'm seeing that most of the older generation has that type of grip.
Mhm.
In terms of men and even
Especially men. More
yeah
so men. Yeah.
55 plus to 40 to 50 plus. But in terms of like,
Well, they're
the
not, I'm talking the generation of lawyers that should be retired. So I'm
oh,
talking
okay.
above 65, because obviously lawyers that are, in their 40s to 50s, they're not
Mhm,
retirement age. They're still
mhm,
working.
mhm,
They're okay. Like,
mhm,
my boss is close to 50. He's
mhm,
fine.
mhm.
Um, Most of my lawyers at my firm, they're perfectly nice. They're normal people. But
Yeah.
I'm talking about the generation of people who were called to the bar in 1970, who are in their 80s. It's time for y'all to retire, okay? Jesus Christ. Don't get me
I
started.
mean, if they feel like they can still go and,
No,
you can
they're
they can still talk
miserable.
they can still, like, talk their game, you know?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
miserable. Most of them are freaking miserable. We're dealing with a lawyer like that on the other
Yeah.
side that's like that, and he's
Mm.
easily in his 80s. But that's why my boss said he's in his 80s, and
And
a
is he
miserable man.
so he do you think he's not that good anymore in terms of, like,
He's
just
not caught up with the times is the problem. And when you're not caught up with the times and you're not willing to be caught up with the times because
Mhm,
you're stuck in your ways,
mhm.
um, that's what the issue is for me. Like, you're not gonna understand this lingo, but i- in usually when with law, it's like you have what we call an examination of discovery.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where you exchange evidence and whatever.
Yeah.
But prior to that, you do, an affidavit of documents.
Mhm,
Everything that you have that isn't privileged, you would
mhm,
disclose to the other side.
mm.
And usually what you do is that you do that, you send it off. The affidavit of documents portion of it itself, not the extra documents,
Right.
you would swear that, basically meaning you would sign it. The person whose name is in the affidavit of documents is in, they sign it. Me as a commissioner who can sign,
Uh-huh.
I would then commission saying, "I saw you sign this, blah, blah,
Right.
blah." But that doesn't that pre-COVID, that usually didn't happen until Discovery, until at Discovery, because you would do it in person,
Mhm,
and then you would reserve the sworn affidavit documents. Since COVID, we usually don't swear affidavit documents unless they need to be. So you would send an unsworn affidavit documents.
mhm,
So
mhm.
my boss tells me, serve our affidavit documents, like I always do. That's what I
Mm,
do. I have my letter that says, please find and close our affidavit documents,
uh-huh,
along with Schedule A documents. Um, unsworn, I would have said, serve to persuade to the rules of civil procedure. That
mhm,
man came back to me and he said, um, unsworn is not in the English dictionary. The you say? Who are
mm,
you talking to?
mm,
And I'm like, what? Because I've never had that happen to me. So I
right,
went to my boss and I said, I don't know what this man is talking about. Why is he telling me this? And that's when he said to me, oh, he's 80 and he's old and he is probably being miserable. I'm like, oh, okay. Great to know. And that's what I mean. It's like, get caught up with the times. We are in post-COVID times where this is how this goes. This isn't new. You cannot tell me that you haven't had this served to you before in this way
mm.
since 2020 or even beyond, because we were doing this before too. You cannot tell me that this is news to you, but you want to
Huh?
be a jerk.
Well, you know what they said, you can't teach, old dog
Can't
new
teach an old
tricks,
dog new tricks. Exactly.
and that's
And
and,
there's so
you
much
know
more I could say, but I can't say it on the podcast. But it's
yeah,
just,
no,
it's
no,
ridiculous, and
yeah,
that's what I mean about the older generation. It's like you're just caught up in your
yeah,
own ways,
yeah,
no
I feel
respect for what's changing,
yeah,
and
yeah, I feel like it should change. I'm not saying you should drastically change, but change, uh, to the point that, you can catch up a little bit with the times, right? Like, I just don't like when that old generation thinks like that because
yeah.
it goes with a lot of errors, not just like, also your teachings and it's probably hard to just like, change your ways as well.
Yeah, no, and I
Yeah, yeah,
understand that,
yeah.
but law the law industry in terms of
Uh-huh,
technology and how we do
uh-huh,
things has
uh-huh.
changed so drastically, even when
Yes,
I was in
yes.
school
Yep.
till now. It has
Mhm,
changed so much.
mhm, mhm,
And I graduated in 2012. Like
mhm,
it changed so, so much. And it's like if you can't handle the changes,
mhm,
then maybe it's time to retire. I mean, like I said, I have talked about this with my boss. My boss has sometimes struggled with technology. Okay.
mhm,
He's nowhere near
mhm.
that age. He's been struggling with technology since he was
Yep.
in his early 40s, okay? But he tries his best and he
Mhm.
tries to come up with the times. Sometimes he hates
Yep,
change, but
yep,
he'll get over it.
yep.
And that's what I mean by at least trying to come up with it.
Mhm,
When I see people like this that are refusing and you wake up in the morning thinking, "I'm going to be miserable today." That I can't stand.
mhm.
I hate emailing those people. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
but it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's all I have to say towards that. Um, it's like there's been like examples of that. Like, here's an example. Like Disney almost did not have Disney Plus because their older execs did not like the idea of Disney Plus.
And
So what
again,
they
it's
did,
like you should I
yeah.
was surprised if honestly, I won't lie, this actually makes sense then. I
Mhm,
was surprised it took Disney so long to come out with a
mhm.
streaming service
Yeah,
because, like, the market was already pretty saturated by the time they showed
yeah,
up,
yeah,
and that explains everything. It's like, again,
yeah,
come up with the times.
yeah.
That's where your money's gonna go. You put all of your movies on there, all of your original content. You team up with Hulu, you team up with FX, like, you know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
that seemed to work for them. Why wouldn't you wanna capitalize on that?
Yeah, I think because they saw that you're also losing money. But then again, I'm like, then again, is making money in certain type of areas, just like how Apple's making money in certain type of areas. Because
Yeah.
Disney make their money off of theme parks,
Mhm.
uh, DVD sales. I know that that's
I mean, how many
decreasing a little
DVD
bit.
sales do they got
I
in
mean, like
today's age?
they have a lot of movies, right? So
Well, I know they
and
do, but I'm questioning like
mhm.
how much people are actually going out there and buying physical DVDs in
So
today's
it's
age.
not that much, but in probably 5
That's what
years,
I mean.
that's in probably 5 years,
It's gonna be
that's gonna
obsolete.
increase.
You
No,
think
it's not.
so?
Yeah, because like, streaming services are increasing their prices every
Mm,
single year because
yeah.
Netflix just announced it.
I'm pretty yeah, Netflix
But
just announced it, yeah,
so
which is upsetting.
don't be surprised if you see more video rental stores popping up in
Hmm,
America, probably some in Canada as well. So like, or
yeah,
globally. So like, yeah. But yeah,
that would be
that's yours.
interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'll be interesting. But yeah, that's your example. Like the older generation needs to get to the times because like I need to learn how to adapt
Yeah,
because they're stubborn in their own ways. So like
yeah,
they shouldn't they should just learn new things. That's what we're here in this world. Learn,
yes.
learn,
And
learn.
I feel like they don't not because they
Yeah,
aren't necessarily willing,
yeah.
but it's more about the fear of it.
Hmm.
Because when I look at, like, my grandfather, for example, he doesn't have like, he is open to learning new things when it
Hmm.
comes to,
Hmm.
streaming or whatever. Because I know he has a Prime Video account. It's probably the only thing he has, but he does have a Prime Video account, and it's because he has Prime, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But, again, it's like my grandfather isn't like a scared person when it comes to these things. He
Hmm.
worked at IBM for 50 years. He's used to technology. So I think it really depends on who the person is.
Hmm.
Because if you look at like, I don't know, my grandmother or even my dad's grandmother, I can't see them getting involved in technology at all because of that fear of the unknown,
Yeah.
you know?
Understandable. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but if you're like in terms of working profession, if you for a job is to just like and you
Well, I
don't.
hope most of them are retired and don't have to work,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know? These
yeah.
lawyers don't have like, when I talk about lawyers especially,
Hmm.
they don't have to work. They want to work,
Yeah.
not because they need the money.
Hmm.
It's a narcissism. They
Hmm.
need the power and the control.
Yeah,
They are unwilling to relinquish it.
yeah.
That is the difference when it comes to lawyers who continue to work
Hmm.
past retirement, well past retirement.
Hmm.
I already know my boss is like, I'm not working past my age of retirement. Like,
Hmm.
you know, obviously he'll retire before I even get close to it because, there's obviously an age gap there. So
Hmm.
we'll see where I'm at when he retires in like 15 years. Um, but yeah, that's the reality. It's a very different because my boss is not a narcissist.
Mm.
Doesn't give a shit.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean? And
right,
that's how we work well.
right.
But when I worked for the other guy that worked at my place who is older, he's my grandmother's age,
Mhm,
and he did finally retire, like, 3 years ago.
mhm,
Um, he was a jerk.
mhm, mhm.
I will not name names, y'all don't know where I work, so you don't know who I'm talking about. But, definitely a narcissist, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's
He
what
also had a swastika on his birth certificate
both. Okay.
because he was born in Germany during that time.
Yeah,
Yikes, right?
yeah.
I
That's
don't think he was necessarily of the views, but it's
that's
insane to know that that's what
mhm,
was happening.
that's crazy.
I know,
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
Anyway,
Um,
we got ahead of ourselves
that's
here.
yeah. All right, yeah. So thank you, Tanika, for presenting uh these last 5 episodes for the Women History Month.
Mhm,
Um, so if you guys want to check that out, it's available now. For the from 1 to 5. Uh, and then yeah, that's pretty much it for Women's History Month.
mhm.
we'll continue it next year as well.
Yeah.
And basically, um, yeah, that's pretty much it,
Yeah.
basically.
We're going back to normal schedule
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah.
again, just as a reminder, you are gonna get the 3-topic episode for Thursday instead,
Mhm.
and then everything will go back to normal next week.
Okay, okay.
All right.
Alright. Well,
All right,
yeah,
guys.
that's it.
All
Alright.
right.
Peace, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
If you liked what you heard with our podcast, you can head on over to our website, which is solo.to/next take podcast. There you can get any of the links to any of our social media, which is Facebook, Instagram at Next Take Podcast, and Twitter, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Next Take Pod. You can also find links to our Reddit page and many other things, I'm sure. Can't remember all the top of my head. You can also email us at mikeltanyka@gmail.com. There you can send us any inquiries that you have, any questions, or also any episode ideas. And if you do have episode ideas, just make sure you put in the subject line episode ideas, and we'll add it to our list. If you also liked us, you can like us, rate us, follow us on any of your favorite podcast apps. You can rate us, however, on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We would greatly appreciate that. And we'll also move forward and share or spot a light on those who give us 5-star ratings in the future. That is it for us. We'll see you next time for the episode.